Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Abdullah Snowbar. I'm the Executive Director for the DMZ. On behalf of the DMZ and Greenshield Canada, I'd like to welcome you to our panel discussion today that's going to be called Partnering for Success, How Insurers and Startups Can Drive Innovation Through Collaboration, which I got to say right out the gate has come a long way from where it was maybe 5 years ago. I'll never forget some of the stories I'd speak to some of the founders in the beginning when I'd say, listen, you're building a great insurtech company. What are you trying to do? And the first reaction that they would sometimes mention is that we're trying to destroy the insurance industry. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, there might be, that's okay to think about it from that lens sometimes, but the better way to maybe approach it is through collaboration and working together, because ultimately everyone wants a similar outcome for the clients. So in any case, the DMZ and Greenshield Canada have recently formed a strategic partnership, which will focus on working closely with startups in both the health and insurance sectors. And by working together, especially during these transformative times, we hope to build initiatives that will foster relationships across Canada's healthcare and insurance landscapes. So it's going to be very exciting on both fronts. My part's pretty easy here, so I want to make sure I kind of I pass it on to the right people. That being said, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's panel. It's going to be Ali Tayyib. Ali is the head of strategic partnerships at the DMZ, and he leads DMZ's business development, external partnerships, corporate relations, and member benefits, which is a lot, but him and team have full ability to do all that and more. So Ali will provide more context on our relationship with Greenshield and introduce our great panel of speakers, which I'm very excited about. So without further ado, Ali, I'm going to stop here and pass it right over to you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, for sharing your opening remarks. Today, I'm extremely excited and honored to moderate such a diverse and esteemed panel. We have two prominent insurance carriers participating with us, Greenshield and RBC Insurance, and two innovative startups, Optimity and Mobi Interactive. Before I get started, I want to thank all the panelists for joining us today, and also want to give a special shout out to Nirushan Rajakulandran from Greenshield Canada for his collaboration to organize this panel. DMZ is looking forward to working closely with you and Greenshield on future collaborations. So jumping right into it, as Abdullah mentioned, our topic for today is Partnering for Success, How Insurance and Startups Can Drive Innovation Through Collaboration. The key themes that we're hoping to cover are healthcare trends, innovation due to COVID-19, opportunities and trends within the health tech and insurtech sector, partnership best practices and advice from both carriers as well as startups. Our audience, we can't see you today, and hopefully we can in the future soon be in person together, but are comprised of a mix of startups in the health tech and insurtech space, startups that are looking to gain perspectives on partnership opportunities both locally and internationally, and individuals who want to learn more about innovations within health insurance. The format for today that we'll be following, and Abdullah, I have the easy part for today as well, is roughly 35 minutes of moderated questions by myself to the panel, directed individually and hoping for some rich discussion as well. At the end, we will have 10 minutes of Q&A, so please leave your questions in the Zoom chat box. I have my colleagues Sweeney D'Souza and Jose that are also going to be helping me out moderating and directing our questions. And on that note, let's just get started. I'd like to start off with some quick introductions across the Zoom panel. I will pass it off individually, and hopefully our panelists can take about a minute to introduce yourselves and the organizations that you're representing. And I'll start off with you, David, Executive Vice President, Innovation and Marketing at Greenshield Canada.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. It's great to be here. I'm glad we could collaborate and put this together. My role at GSC is all around sort of our digital transformations, innovation. I always joke that as your career goes on, you don't want to have the word innovation in your title because there's little agreement on what that means. So it can get a little bit nebulous, but we'll try to talk around it a bit today. So we're the fourth largest health and dental benefits administrator in Canada. So we're sort of at the head of the pack, and probably most people have heard of it like a Sun Life, a Manulife, a Great West Life, now called Canada Life. We're sort of in that group of mid-sized companies under that. And traditionally, we have sort of focused on adjudicating health and dental claims. So often people get those through their employer or buy individual policies from us. But at this point, I think we are going to talk about sort of virtual healthcare, and we are being seen, I think, increasingly as a source of connection into that world as well. And that's probably going to be of interest to people that are watching in today. But thanks for having us.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. I'll pass it on to you, Jane, next, CEO of Optimity, and also I want to highlight and put the plug a DMZ alumni.
Yes, absolutely. So we are a leading digital health loyalty program. So with the Optimity apps, Canadians can turn their healthy choices into exciting rewards. It lets them earn prizes for walking and completing short quizzes that's designed to teach them about their body, their finances, their mind, and they earn points for hitting step goals, completing challenges with family and friends, and taking these 1-minute long surveys about health and wellness. We're partnering with some of the largest insurance companies in North America as well as Japan. So we work with 14 of them altogether. And we also work with some of the popular consumer loyalty programs in Canada. So last year we acquired a company called Carrot Rewards, and we've adopted some other consumer models as well. So the users no longer have to be a policyholder or just an employer, like an employee of an employer that purchases us. Now it's open to consumers where they can use the points towards like groceries, travel, and lifestyle rewards. I'm really excited to be, first of all, a alumni of DMZ, so pushing forward Canadian innovation in the world. And then second of all, kind of seeing the growth that we've seen in 2020 as the world is kind of bracing for this health pandemic.
Thanks, Jane. Over to you next, Bishara Saab, CEO and Chief Scientist at Mobio Interactive.
Hi, very much a pleasure to be here. At Mobile Interactive, we build digital therapeutics primarily to assist with mental health problems, as well as to enhance peak performance. We kind of see ourselves as blurring the line between performance enhancement and therapy, actually, because we think everybody has the opportunity to do better, particularly when it comes to higher performance in your mind. One of the things we did was create the first meditation app that is actually able to beat placebo in randomized controlled trials. And we're very great that a digital therapeutic of this type can actually outperform placebo. And as a CEO, you know what I have to do. And as a chief scientist, mostly what I focus my time on is managing our clinical trials. I think we have almost 8 on the pipeline going on right now. And also our deep tech developments. We have this really nice computer vision technology that allows us to accurately identify somebody's stress level using nothing more than a selfie video. And if somebody does this before and after engaging in our content, we can learn what actually helps them best, what can really help them regulate their nervous system. And so that's a big way that we personalize the content that we deliver to everybody that uses our products.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And last but certainly not least, Julie Gardy, Senior Director, Group Insurance at RBC.
Thanks, Ali. So hello, everyone. I'm responsible at RBC Insurance for our group benefits business. So what that means is products, strategic direction of the business, ultimately the financial results of that business. And our group benefits business, while it's been around for quite some time, the health piece, our health and dental product, we're a relatively new entrant into that market, having just launched those products in 2013. And so our team often jokes that we're a little bit like a startup inside a very large, well-established organization because we had to start from the ground up. And while we definitely, benefit certainly from the stability of an organization like RBC Insurance and the broader RBC, we have a bit of flexibility to see what's worked, what hasn't worked, try new things. And so it's been pretty fun being part of that business. Like I said, a small piece within a bigger puzzle. So I've been with insurance since 2014. Prior to that, I was actually on the HR side of RBC and sat in the client shoes as a plan sponsor for our employee benefits business, so our employee benefits program. So often that's where my head goes. But then even prior to that, long ago, I was practicing in healthcare. So I'm a chiropractor by background, practiced for a number of years before moving over to health promotion full time. So day like today, it's great. Touches a lot of the things I'm interested in: health, innovation, insurance, all of it pulled together. So thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you. As you can all see, very diverse panel here: innovation, startup, gamification, startup within a large organization like RBC, chiropractors that have transformed into working in the insurance side. So some really great insights here. And just, let's maybe just kick it off. I'm going to start with our first question to all the panelists. So if you could please keep your responses to a minute max. This is a longish question, so please bear with me, but it's an important one to start off with, as it's I would say impacted us all with COVID-19. So this year we've experienced a significant transformation of our healthcare system. While the COVID-19 pandemic has created challenges in many ways, it has also accelerated the adoption of virtual care and digital health tools, opening up new opportunities. Can each of you speak briefly to how your organization has adapted in this new environment and how your organization is contributing to the transformation of healthcare? I cautioned you on the longish question, but maybe let's start off with you, Julie. Love to get your thoughts and perspectives on this.
Sure. So yeah, what a year. We've all had to certainly adapt, and I'm sure we'll all have great examples of that. And a lot of the things that we did this year were plans perhaps in the works, thoughts, strategies that we had planned for the future. And this year has just sort of accelerated our need to move toward sort of that end state faster. And so forced us all probably to get over some of our hurdles quickly. But I think, a couple of the ways I think about, thinking about maybe in our disability claims area, right off the hop, think about what we do. We need to gather medical information. We need to help people recover and return to health. And then all of a sudden we were trying to do that while people were at home and not able to see their health practitioners face to face. And so really quickly, we had to get comfortable with gathering information in a new way, virtual consultations. Perhaps, we're not going to be able to have the paperwork that we're used to, but now moving to more digital solutions to fill the needs for information. Our clients, that they themselves struggling with challenges, all of a sudden being thrust to return, working from home, and how are we going to support them? So that accelerated some of our plans around mental health support that we could provide both to plan members, but as well as to their employers, the people managers of those organizations. And now how are we going to deliver those solutions in a new environment where people can't just come together to talk about healthy living activities in the office? So how are we going to do that digitally and provide that kind of support and training in a new way? So we've had to move quickly. I like change. I think it's kind of nice that we got forced to do things more quickly. Probably forced us all to get over some of our concerns and fears that might have kept us from leaping forward in the past. So,
absolutely, and I know startups thrive on change. So I'll pass it over to you, Jane, for your perspectives on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can echo the fact that pandemic has definitely accelerated innovation in this world, definitely in the world of insurance. The number of life insurance applications has gone up dramatically, and then especially true for the younger cohorts and through the digital channels. And what we're seeing is that the consumer behaviors are dramatically changing as well. And from the Optimity side, with a reach over 1.4 million Canadians, we're right now the most popular and trusted health rewards program now in this country. And we've seen this kind of 10 times growth over the last 6 months. So the technology itself has, we were really proud to be supplying very large quantities of data and resources for 8 different scientific publications on the different types of achievements in behavior change in large populations. And this dates all the way back to 2015. But I think in 2020, we now have adopted this new role in our guardianship of policyholders and beyond into the consumers. And we're seeing this shift from the consumers in their willingness to share their wearable data and their health data with insurers, with that added benefit to get more, support and customize things. So for example, as a consumer myself and as a Gen X millennial, me and my young family, we started definitely looking for more protection during the pandemic. And we found that the traditional customer experience was quite impossible. We definitely didn't want anyone visiting our house, or didn't want to go through an agent. So we were willing to share a lot of our data, and we're expecting more from the benefits programs too. So I think that is definitely opportunity for this whole industry, and it definitely is keeps us on our toes, and we're working to keep our members safe and well and planning for their future as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jane, for sharing that. Passing it, there's going to be a theme during this panel: startup carrier. So David, on to you next.
Okay, I might throw some data at the folks that are listening in today. And I'll preface it by saying, certainly in our world, we had been talking to sort of our B2B clients, Canadian employers who are providing benefits plans for a few years, specifically about something like telemedicine and its availability. We had done some work on online mental health supports, particularly online cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, Not a lot of interest and uptake in the past few years. I think it was interesting to them. The world's going to become digital. These things are emerging, but I think there is sort of a feeling in Canada. We like our system. We're comfortable with our system, and we always wondered sort of what would it take to change people's attitudes. And we've just lived through the first 8 months, and I think we're going to have another 14 or so. And let me tell you, since mid-March, here's one stat. In April, in Canada, 70% of the primary care appointments that happened virtually. That is unfathomable 2 months before that. An e-pharmacy that we have been doing some partnership work with over the past year or so, today they are filling 5 times more prescriptions through their e-pharmacy than they were in February of this year. An ICBT company that we have partnered with, they had double the amount of downloads for their mobile application in April than they did earlier in March. So the explosion has happened, and more people are getting exposed to digital health modalities. And we can only assume that once they have tried it, seen the convenience in a system, quite frankly, that doesn't always produce a lot of convenience in its traditional state, probably we've seen the turn, and there's probably no going back.
Wow, definitely took some notes there on the data and the stats there. So thank you for sharing those, David. Fascinating, and definitely one of the in that 70% virtual care. I was one of them as well for the first time. Access my family doctor virtually in these current times. So thank you for sharing that, Bishara. Over to you for some perspectives on how things have been impacted due to COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, we're a digital therapeutics company, so we've always been 100% digital in everything that we do and provide, and scalable as well. Meaning that we make use of the hardware on the phone instead of evoking any wearable. And the team is fairly distributed, so we have people all across the country. And so in terms of how it affected us as a company, it wasn't really much of a change, except there was a lot more interest, which was good. But we deliver psychotherapy. So one of the most important things that we did as a result of COVID was actually come up with material specifically for people who are undergoing lockdown. And we were able to, we were in a fortunate position actually that one of our meditation guides was in China when the outbreak very first happened inside of China. And so we were like, aware of this way before the rest of the world kind of got on board, and it was big news. What this allowed us to do was to sort of predict that, this actually might get around. And, way early in the spring, we actually already had material and a full journey of meditation content inside of the app called Facing COVID, which allowed people to really, deal with isolation and like changing habits, like washing hands and protective clothing and all this stuff. So we were able to deliver that material quite quickly. And then since then, we followed up with a whole nother journey just for COVID, which is called the side. And it's really thinking about, well, how can I use this as an opportunity for personal growth? Because that's something I think that every company is trying to do, struggle with this pandemic, but each person can do this as well. And it's one of the big things that we're providing to our user base.
Fascinating. So, Bishara, I want to stick with you for the next question. You talked a little bit about the work that you're doing in China as well. So, tell me a little bit more about partnership opportunities working in the Asia Pacific market, and can you talk about your experience working with insurance in those markets, and what opportunities, and if there's any advice for Canadian participants in this panel, what advice would you give for a startup exploring that market?
Well, I mean, there's some pretty basic things there. If you want to do any deal, you want to make sure it's a win-win as much as possible. You want to understand the culture, and the best way to do that is to have local people there who are on your side. That's very important. But in general, a place like China, health insurance has really been, there's been a very basic health insurance that the government provides, and everybody's covered. But it doesn't give you that much, right? So there's a whole very rapidly growing middle class China right now, and they are buying into health insurance. So health insurance in China is growing really rapidly, but it's also quite new. And so these companies are really interested in just innovation and making use of what they can. There's not all these regulations. People in China aren't really that concerned about their data. I mean, as a result of COVID, more people here are like in the outside of China and outside of Asia are becoming more comfortable sharing their data online. But before COVID happened, nobody wanted to share any sort of medical data electronically whatsoever. Whereas in China, it was already something that was accepted. So I think in many ways, it's a really good market and has a lot of facilitation, provided you can make the right connections and you can adapt to the culture.
Culture, adaptiveness, and it's a more flexible regulation and data sharing policies in China. And shifting gears, talking a little bit more about Canada, Jane, I'd love to hear your perspective and your insights working with employers and insurance carriers at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really interesting because DMZ has also pushed us to always be kind of international thinking, right? Execute locally and then expand globally. So we have an office in Japan, we have offices in Boston and Silicon Valley. So we do work with one of the top 3 carriers in Japan, and then also a top multi-line carrier in the US that covers 12 million lives as well there. So it's so our overall global footprint is actually quite big prior to the pandemic. But I think what happened in 2020 is that we really kind of looked, for us, we're a Canadian grown company. Our biggest office is in Toronto. And I think what we really wanted to do is make an impact in the local community as well, especially now that we service all these Canadian consumers, over 1 million of them. We really wanted to make an impact here. And in Canada, for the last 6 years, we had already the experience with working with over 100 employers, plus we had 6 insurance companies that we had partnered with. The largest one being Sun Life. So we had all this experience working in kind of corporate wellness programs, and then also with their policyholder engagement programs. And I found what was interesting is that back, we were talking about this before the panel, because we had all those case studies, for actual improvement in, reduction of RX or actual health outcomes, it was really easy for some of the clients that we had to double down on the work that they have worked on. So we did also launch COVID modules within the first week or 2 of March. So that was really fast and effective, because if they were trying to develop a program that was in person, that was completely impossible. And then if we were trying to do other types of programs, it was really difficult to do, but this was really fast and efficient for them to disseminate the information to a dispersed group of employees and people that will be working remotely. And then the other thing too is that I do echo what David was saying in terms of mental health as well, because people talk about mental health. Last year I did, the big mental health event at Rotman as well. We're talking about that, but the adoption has been kind of sparse, right? Like under 5% of the employers really truly cared about it. But this year we see that percentage coming up like into kind of the mid like 30% type of mark already, because people know that that's the type of support that the employees and people that are, are getting a lot of social interactions previously, maybe through work or through social, are able to do. But now, you're isolated in your homes, you're kind of trapped in this little thing. So being able to provide that support is really, really important. So the adoption has definitely gone up, both from the member side, but also from the organizational side. And then the third part about the challenge too is that Canada traditionally never really had much of a budget towards corporate wellness, different than the US. So in the US, they had these large buckets of money to spend, and the employers were happy to spend that. So in the US, we actually saw more growth on the B2B side, but at the beginning, but I think the demand is still here in Canada. So it's really kind of making the dollars work. And one of the things that we've been kind of innovating on this year is really on the business model. Can we provide a base a level program that most people can benefit from without it costing so much? And the answer we have found actually is in a hybrid product between our consumer product, which is the Carrot Rewards Adapted 2.0 program, which is now Optimity, accessible for the consumer, and also a light employer-driven model. So I think that is going to get a lot of traction. It currently already has. It's gone through a lot of beta testing. And then I think that from the carrier level too is really about providing something for, in the past, I know Greenshield has done this too, which is providing these wellness, I would say, services, either like as part of the group package or as part, something for free, but often these free tools are not highly adopted by the employers themselves. But I think 2021 is going to be the year, because off of 2020, people understand the budgetary constraints, they understand the demand, and they understand where the pain points are. So it's an executionary journey now going forward.
Thank you. And 25% growth in mental health related issues from when it comes to working with employers, and this hybrid approach that you talked about from a consumer to a light employer model. So shifting gears, and any good panel would not be complete without talking about opportunities and trends. So I know, Jane, the last point you were talking about Greenshield and some of those aspects that they're working on, corporate wellness and budgets, et cetera. So David, a question for you is, what are some of the emerging trends that you are seeing right now in the health insurance industry, specifically speaking from a Canadian perspectives? What are some things that founders and entrepreneurs who are listening to us right now could be aware of? And where do you think that the industry is going in the next 3 years?
Okay. Julie and I actually talked in advance about this particular question, and I'm going to give the boring answer, and I left some of the more interesting new thinking things to Julie. But I mean, on some level, we are part of the financial services world. And sad to say, a lot of our systems were built in the 80s and 90s. We're dealing with those legacies. They are not as modern and agile as we need them to be. So a lot of us are going through sort of a process of re-platforming those systems. I think RBCI has done that fairly recently. We're in the middle of a massive project right now where our sort of plan member portals, where people come to submit their claims and check their eligibility and get to know us a little bit better. We are building them from the ground up with API layers to make much more efficient, to connect to an outside ecosystem where we can do much more interesting things. But I think, to be frank, RBCI and us, we're a little bit ahead of the curve by getting to that place already. Inside of some of that thinking is a much better navigation experience for the people that have their insurance with us, what we call our plan members. So we, like anybody in the business world, is trying to enhance that customer experience. We are thinking much more in terms of digital than we have in the past. We are trying our best not to compare ourselves just to other insurance companies or banks or things like that. When I look with my build partners and they're showing me examples, you can guess, they're showing me Amazon, they're showing me Airbnb in terms of the experience we should be creating, which has been really not how insurance companies have thought in the past. But we're trying to get to that place where the experience you have with us submitting a dental claim, which may not seem like the sexiest thing in the world, is as exciting as renting a loft in New York, if we ever get to go back to New York. And last but not least, like, we still have paper. Like, we're still dealing with paper in our company. People are submitting claims on paper. People are submitting applications on paper. We got to get rid of the paper. And we're looking at sort of efficiencies and stuff inside to do that. So when you're looking at working with one of these older companies, recognize that we're still living somewhat in a technological past. And if you can accelerate our ability to become more efficient, to have a better customer experience, we'd be very interested in listening.
Fantastic. I'm quoting you now, David, that the experience has to be as exciting as renting a loft in New York.
That's right.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
When our new systems roll out next year, take a look and see if it's the same.
As renting a loft in New York or Mississauga, both are very exciting.
Okay.
just being from the West End. So, shout out Mississauga.
Yeah.
But Julie, I know you and David spoke about this as well, but what are some of those industry challenges that you're seeing? Where do you see opportunities for insurers to work with startups to address these challenges?
Yeah, so David, I feel your pain. I know he's being entirely truthful when he shares with the attendees today that, we are living in the past a little bit when it comes to systems. And that's a challenge in and of itself, right? When it comes to introducing new solutions, especially with startups who are probably at the forefront of some of their thinking in terms of how they can approach problems. Picking up on a couple things that others said, it struck me early. I think it was Abdullah said that, a lot of startups look at an opportunity and say they're looking to destroy the healthcare system, right? Like blow up the current model. And yeah, that's quite ambitious, and there's nothing wrong with big ambitions. But I have found, and I'm sure many people can attest to this on this panel as well, that some of the biggest successes have been simpler in their approach, right? We've identified a pain point in the consumer journey, right? And whether that's the end user, so that the plan members of our groups, or whether it's our employers who purchase the products from us as carriers. And if we've identified a pain point and then introduced an innovative solution to address that. So innovation more incremental rather than massive blowing up of the current model. I think that it's really important and probably easier to test and learn and see the improvements, right? If we can speed up a process perhaps, or help us as insurers make decisions faster or more informed decisions. I think of some of the successes we've seen. David already spoke to an e-pharmacy that they've partnered with, and I know we've been working with them as well. And right there, they're not looking to eliminate the current bricks and mortars pharmacy. It's a complement. It's a new way of delivering services, building on some of the capabilities that exist there. Or I think about, again, another example on claims adjudication. How do we as a carrier leverage new solutions to gather information upon which we can make good, objective decisions so that we can best support the plan members who rely on us for support when they're ill and can't work, perhaps. So, some of the biggest successes I've seen there are on solving those simple little things, and Jane, you spoke around adoption rates. I mean, you're right. Like, yes, we've seen adoption come up. We've seen a willingness to share data to come up, but it's still a challenge, right? And some of the biggest adoptions and the biggest climbs in utilization is when someone's ready for it, because it's just too painful the old way, and how do we fix that, that simple little thing perhaps, or make something so unique and interesting. I'm getting such value out of taking that new approach. I'm going to do it, as opposed to us sort of trying to force a new way down when most of our clients, and ourselves included as carriers, are quite comfortable, unfortunately, in the old way of that's been around for quite some time. So it's tough to disrupt. So if you can identify those pain points and find a slick solution, that's really where we're listening.
Thank you for that, Julie. And to talk a little bit about the work that we do at the DMZ as well. We have a very strong track record and history of working with large corporations on their innovation priorities. And the goal that we're trying to work towards is not to go for that large-scale disruption, but what does complementing the corporate partner look like, and starting off from an incremental perspective. So these are the kinds of partnerships that we're looking to start off with Greenshield. Is like, how do we introduce our startups over to them, start with smaller scale POCs, and get them embedded within the corporate infrastructure that they have. So, that's a goal that we look towards, simplifying it, not trying to go out and destroy, as Abdullah had also mentioned, and you expanded on that as well. But this is us talking about it. But now, from hearing from a startup perspective, Jane, from your side, define to me what a successful corporate partnership looks like for you. And there's a number of individuals on this call, and they're looking for this advice. They want to connect with the Greenshield, they want to connect with an RBC or another insurance carrier today. What advice would you give them if they're looking to pursue a partnership with an insurance carrier in Canada?
Yeah, I think from our experience working with the carrier, so we work with kind of 6 of the top 20 carriers in Canada, and I hope to work with more. I think a lot of the practical experience has been definitely talk to the people that are in innovation. They're definitely trying to drive a culture change and a system change within insurance. And then, but at the same time, also involve the business units early. Because you must have alignment with the business units on specifically what Julie said, which is pain points, because they have very practical pain points. And that pain point could literally be as simple as, hey, we don't have a reliable way of reaching our plan members because we don't have their email or their phone, like very basic things that sometimes we take for granted. Being tech native folks, it may not actually exist. So you have to listen to the business unit and what's happening with them. And then the other thing is make sure that you always deliver on your kind of KPI and your value. And I think David talked about this too, which is it doesn't have to be complicated. You definitely don't need to deliver on like 25 different KPIs, because then it's not really KPIs. It's just like a bunch of metrics. But I think the key thing here is that if adoption is really important, make sure that you're really spending all of your energy, all your startup energy, your team is small, towards hitting that particular thing and that particular pain point, because point solutions oftentimes get adopted really faster, and then you can expand on your vision from there. So I can tell you from our practical experience, it has been, so we've always been quite data driven. It's really about getting people to adopt, and then also kind of getting insights from what they're really kind of forward-looking data, right? Because Google has really interesting information because it's search data. Amazon has a really interesting information because it's, purchase data. But what we have is this kind of forward-looking. So we either have like health risk assessment, which is their historical information, we can pull that, or we have their goal-setting information or their family planning information. And to David's point, a lot of these insurance companies are also like financial services companies, so they can actually really help in those. Even adding, for example, a critical illness product or a DI product or like anything like that to all the volunteering benefits to really kind of round out what the individual really needs is a really nice point of personalizing that service. So where we really partner with the carrier is that we let the carrier take care of a lot of the, administrative, like policy admin and servicing part of it. And what we do is that we do the triaging up front. So for example, if the person really is looking for information specifically on flu shots, we give them that information and help them kind of get access to that. Or if they are looking for a, telehealth or CBT provider, we link directly up with them. So taking care of those type of kind of connections and more digital first services that they can access through their mobile phones is where we defined our role. And then we, the carriers on the other side. So it's like 1 + 1 = 6. You always want to create a partnership where the two of you together can really kind of bring together the ecosystem in a much faster and more efficient way.
So to David's point, innovation helps to have in your title because, the startups are reaching out to you. You mentioned that at the start. And then connecting early on with the business units, I think that's a really important piece. And perhaps, Bashara, I'd love to get your perspective on this as well. Any insights that you have, perhaps even working with an international market. And this point that Jane brought up, how do you connect the dots between, starting off with the innovation teams who have a very strong appetite to connect with new outside ideas and as well as, innovations for lack of a better term. And then the ones who are in the back end, the implementers, the business units. How do you create that synergy?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's much easier to start the conversation working with the innovation department, but ultimately, if you want to turn this into a revenue generating relationship, something needs to be carved out of the company's budget in order to maintain that. And that's when you get into the business units and really start talking numbers. I agree with everything that Jane said, and I would double down on this word complement. But it's not just complement in terms of technology; it's also just complement in terms of what you can do because you're different sizes. We know that you need to be patient, to really establish a good, strong, long-term relationship with a large company. But important thing to also keep in mind is that it's often quite difficult for a bigger company to be flexible in how you take your first steps together. So it's good to be like, okay, actually, I don't need that 100K, like initial check here, because that's going to take you 5 months to get approved. Actually, let's do this instead, and we'll just, get an arrangement to share certain data that's very valuable to us. So being flexible in how you actually work with them, because it's tougher for them to be flexible, I think demonstrates that you have some sympathy, some empathy for where they are, and you'll see that being reciprocal. And then the other big difference is often speed. And one of the main reasons why big companies want to work with smart ones, other than we're experimenting and we're innovating, is the fact that as soon as they get the go ahead to do something, well, we can actually operate very, very quickly, and then say, okay, there's 5 people who are doing this one thing, and we're implementing it. So I think really taking advantage of those structural differences in order to build that synergy, as Jane was saying, 1 + 1 = 6. I mean, that's pretty good. I thought 1 + 1 = 3 is already decent, but this is I think this is the secret. And then when you do set your KPIs, you want to be pretty sure that you can read. They need to be inspirational for sure, but you're always better off under promising, over delivering, and all the time. And be transparent. That's important. They want to be able to trust you. If something sucks, tell them it sucks.
Absolutely. I thought my math was good, but 1 + 1 = 6 sounds really good. And on that note, Julie, what's your perspective on this? And from a carrier side, how what is a startup right now who's listening to this? You have a lot of experience on multiple fronts, HR, being a practitioner yourself. What factors would constitute a success to having a relationship with RBCI?
Yeah, so maybe just to build a bit on Bashar's comments, I agree with them wholeheartedly. Like understanding each other's perspectives, right? You've got these big, well-established organizations with tons of structure, governance, highly regulated environment. Then you've got startups who, the ability to move quickly and speed. So a definite need to understand each other and work together through some of those challenges and complement the way you can get something done together. But I think on that same theme, one of the things I've valued most when I've had a startup approach us is when they've really taken the time to clearly understand our industry and the challenges we're facing. Because a lot in the health space, the health tech space is often dreamt up through the lens of more of a B2C model. It's often just a consumer angle. So the one user and what will it solve for them? And it's not always entirely transferable when you want to lift and shift that to a B2B. Well, now you've got to understand the employer's perspective and what are they thinking about when they want to consider making that investment, or take it even one step further, a carrier who is the provider for tons and tons of employers. What's their perspective? So what are the things, what's our KPIs? What's an employer's KPIs? It's going to look and feel differently than perhaps what you're solving for if all you're thinking about is the end user. So the end user experience, critical. That's, we definitely want to provide something that's fantastic and supports health and well-being and addresses some of the challenges in our existing system. But when it's time to pitch and partner and dream up solutions together, a deep understanding of the challenges we face as a carrier, the things that the employer cares about when they're going to choose to invest, because budgets are tight, that's critical. And the organizations that have come to the table with a deep understanding of that and have clearly done their research, those have been the most easy and effective partnerships for sure.
Absolutely. Do your research, and step one is attending panel discussions like these with DMZ and Greenshield to start that journey, right?
Good plug. Yep.
Yeah, good plug. Yeah, and just being mindful of time. I want David, your perspective on this as well, and commentary, because I know this is really important. And we have some good questions coming in from the audience there, so I want to leave some healthy room for that as well. But love to get your perspectives on this, David.
Yeah. So you just got some really good advice from Bashara and Julie. They're dead on. I'll give you a few more perspectives. We heard at the beginning that maybe there was a dream of people out there to come in and destroy us. Just so you know, we're traditionally a low margin, highly regulated industry. So if that really turns you on, go for it. If that's what you're looking for in your life. But because we are, a highly regulated industry, it brings with it some challenges. And I looked back on, in answering this question, I looked back on this year and it's like, where did I have abrasive moments with some of the new companies we're working with? What pissed me off this year? So I went to that dark place. And one, if you're thinking about healthcare and health tech in Canada, recognize that we live in a patchwork and that every province, to our detriment, I think overall in terms of the delivery in the healthcare system, is different. And that we have to work inside all of those differences. And it's best to educate yourself on the different regulations in different provinces if you want to get into healthcare. Because we can't go out there doing stuff that is outside sort of provincial regulations and tar our name and brand because a new company we work with hadn't really understood that stuff yet. So, I mean, you got to sort of do your education beforehand. The other thing is, around data. And we sort of live in a world where we want to be really creative and commercialize the data and go to places we've never gone to before. At the same time, we've got a competitor in our world this year who had a lot of problems, both PR-wise and financially, because of data and things going wrong with data. So you're going to have that push and pull of the, pushing to creativity and new worlds and how we use data. But we're, again, probably seen as a financial services company, and we're going to want to be innovative and creative one day and terrified of what your suggestion is the next day, and try to find that balance in between. And one of the things that Bashar said, and you got to steel yourself for this, and your new company is your whole world. In my department, it's one of 34 things. And I admire the entrepreneurial spirit and building it up and stuff like that, but just brace yourself that at times we may not be able to or want to move as fast as you do. And we are sometimes that big creaky ship, and we've got to do some other really big things and get them done before we can do the cool stuff that we're dreaming of doing with you. And don't take it personally, and keep fighting through it and keep bugging us, but know that, yeah, the size difference between us means that velocity at times will not be lined up.
Amazing. So research. Know that there's a lot of different priorities within the group that you're looking to sell into. And the startup is your life and your business, but when you're talking to a large carrier, make sure that you keep consistently pushing forward. And I think the concept of patchwork is really important. If you're targeting Ontario compared to Quebec, there will be differences. So make sure that you look at everything from a regulatory perspective, and ending off with doing your research.
And one more thing, as complicated as this is, we live in a bilingual country, and we like to launch products that are available in both official languages, and that's more complicated too. We recognize that, but I mean, that's always our first preference, is to serve both parts of the country. And something just in English, we can maybe do a little pilot project with you, but it's not going broad until it's bilingual.
Absolutely, and I know that startups are looking to launch pan-Canadian. We're a small country, but there's a lot of differences in terms of strategy, in terms of rollout here. So that concludes us to our formal questions that I had for the panel. I want to make sure there are a few questions coming in from the audience here, some really great ones. If I can just maybe pick a few here, I'm just reading them through. So I'll take the first question that's come in from Nikita, and perhaps both from a carrier and startup perspective, you both can weigh in. And this is I think a really interesting one that would be helpful for a number of folks. So the question from Nikita is, at what stage of our startup would it be appropriate to reach out to an insurance company? Do we start from idea conception or beyond? David, would you want to take, or Bashar,
yeah. You don't need to reach out to everybody right away, but as soon as opportunity to speak with somebody, do so. I mean, that is and there's no need to wait ever, I don't think. I mean, get information as fast as possible, find out you're wrong and how you're wrong, and then iterate.
Yeah, I have a slightly different perspective because the sales cycle for insurance companies are, 12 to 18 months. It takes a long time. So I do believe that at the beginning, you should definitely reach out to people, but let them know, be very transparent, like Bashar said, with what stage you're at, and then set their expectations as well, because oftentimes, exactly as Julie and David said, until it's crystallized, your idea and execution is crystallized, it's really hard for them to buy into it and go and execute on your idea. So I would say brace yourself for a kind of a really long cycle. And one itself, like, see your first meetings as research, exactly like Bashar said. But once you are, like, you definitely need use cases and metrics and stuff like that. And your security needs to be really buttoned up too. So for example, like we had to have all our security documents, right? Like all of our language, like even accessibility testing if you're a mobile app. To make sure that people with disabilities can actually access your app, like stuff like that, and those things didn't come into place for our application until end of year 2, almost year 3 of our startup. So it just takes time to churn through and produce enough product and produce enough content and use cases for that. So if you're first starting, I would say especially if you're going to work with employers, go work with employers first, because they may have less regulatory things that they have to get through. Build up your case studies, and once you have those case studies, then you can go and present them into the carrier side. But definitely get to know who the players are in the carrier side, get to know the business units, the innovation units, so you're kind of like socializing your idea and you're testing it with them before you go and try to sell something.
So 2 interesting perspectives. Bashar is saying, start off getting the word out there, do a lot of A/B testing, talk to your customer as soon as possible and get their feedback. Jane, I would say a little bit more long-term conservative approach, if I would summarize there. DMZ plug coming in. But if you're building a great startup and if you're looking for a home where you can get all the foundational elements to get started, contact us. But shameless plug here. But David, Julie, anything on your end?
I do think that last plug is important, because I'll try to keep it honest and transparent here. I don't know that we have time for half-baked ideas. So the more you can live inside sort of a community like you have there and be testing it with other sort of people like you who have gone through this before, I think that's better. But I would say, as Bashar suggested, if you need to talk to some industry experts to even get to that space, to know enough to get to a truly baked idea, then I'd say it's fair to come to us with that transparency of, we're thinking about an idea in here, but we don't have a business plan. We don't know how to do it. Would you give me half an hour of your time just so I can ask you questions? That's cool. And we'll try probably to find time for that, but that's better than coming thinking you have an idea and us sitting there and saying, this makes no sense at all. You have no understanding of the business that we run here.
Yeah, I would support that comment. David's a great suggestion, and you'd be amazed at how much time, how often people are willing to provide you that amount of time just to have that exploratory conversation, because it'll save both organizations probably a ton of time in the long run if we upfront understand each other's perspectives and discuss perhaps a preliminary idea. I mean, in terms of, just to add to the discussion, I would say, I've seen success both where, somebody has some tested use cases and demonstrated capabilities, and then that's probably easier to partner with, I would say, or faster to market, if you will, to partner with that kind of an approach. But if you have demonstrated success, or you've worked with a carrier or an employer, let's say in the past, on a different solution, and you've demonstrated your ability to go from idea to solution that's effective, then you kind of earn the right to kind of get in there at the idea generation stage as well. And I've seen that work well too, with an organization that we, trust or are comfortable with, and come up with a new idea together and co-develop, right? And so both approaches can work, but the first one of having some demonstrated experience and some successes definitely builds your credibility and ability to kind of be partnered with more quickly, and then perhaps earn the right to co-develop in the future, in my experience anyway.
I'm on mute this time, but there's a number of questions coming in. I'm just circulating through them to see, to get some different perspectives. But just to build on that, there's a question from Jesse Freeland to all panelists, but notably David and Julie. As large enterprise organizations, when launching pilot projects or innovative initiatives with partners, how do you think about the ROI and metrics of success of the project before broader rollout?
Yeah, I think it was said earlier from Jane, and I'll just keep it short and sweet and turn it over to David, but really get clear on what you're solving for here and make sure you've aligned those metrics to that. A use case may be health improvement to facilitate, claims reduction. It might be greater engagement to facilitate ongoing conversation. It might be a sales play. And so how are you doing to attract attention from new clients? So and likely a solution is not all things. So being really crisp on what you're trying to achieve and measuring that, because I think I've seen too many pitches, if you will, or ideas where we sort of cast the net a little too wide on what we think, and we think we're all things to all things, and we're not. So how do we get really crisp on what it is we're solving for and make sure we're targeting towards that and measuring that? That's all I'll say.
I agree. That's the right answer.
Thank you very much. And I feel this is the right time right now. We have a lot of questions coming in. Thank you so much to the audience here. It's been an incredible, incredible hour of discussion and insights and experience. So firstly, I want to thank the panelists for joining us and taking time from all parts, or I would say the world, that are joining us and in Canada. Thank you so much from taking that time with us. The audience, thank you so much. I know everyone has lots of things on their plate right now. It's a very busy time, and hopefully we're able to come together in person soon for this, but this is the best medium right now. Some key takeaways from my side. I was just taking notes here and on my Google Doc, but it's, so just want to wrap up that it's the year of the customer, right? There's a lot of changes that have happened because of COVID, and it's time to take advantage of that. Your customer experience is the most important thing right now. Research and understand your carriers. And there's, as David mentioned, there's patchworks. So, if you're working and targeting Ontario, make sure you know the regulations, data privacy, regulatory issues, all of that before you approach. As Jane mentioned, there's a lot of flexibility in hybrid models, working on from a B2C perspective and then also incorporating B2B. And adoption rates have gone up on all areas. So some key takeaways from my side. I just want to also thank the DMZ team, who has been extremely helpful providing all the back-end support and marketing for this program and this panel here, and Greenshield Canada for being such great partners and collaborators. If you have any questions or feedback regarding the panel, or would you like to get in touch with the DMZ or Greenshield Canada, a big part of this panel and us organizing this is to create connections and collaborations with the panelists, the DMZ, and the carriers here. You can reach out to me at ali.tayeb@ryerson.ca, and I'll be also putting this in the chat. You can get, I'm very easily searchable on Google as well, or DMZ. Just, you can, there's lots of mediums to get in touch with us. Please do share your feedback with us. And just last but not least, thank you everyone, and stay safe and have a wonderful rest of your day and Wednesday. Thank you very much.